Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to more Broken Arrow. Today we're going to be going over the Russian Motorized Infantry spec. This was kind of known since the very early days, like I'm talking a year or two ago, but I don't think I've ever had access to even look at some of the units in this deck, or in this spec as they're called in Broken Arrow. Technically, it's on a deck. You always will have to combine two to make a deck. You cannot just take one. You always have to make two, and then that's how you go into battle, selecting the units from those two that you want to bring in. Now, the thing is it's from a relatively exclusive demo. I do appreciate that from the developers and the publisher for giving me early access here in the form of this demo. It's a shame though, because I know people are so excited to get in Broken Arrow, and I wish you guys could jump in and we could have hundreds or thousands of people online and break their service for like the third or fourth time. But maybe they're a little worried about that. I'm not sure. I do really appreciate them. I appreciate you guys watching. And I figured this was interesting to get into because I don't think I've seen some of these units actually like really looked at, and that we're going to do in today's video. The Motorized Infantry, or I think Motostrelki is the Russian name, are obviously sort of equivalent to the American Striker Brigade in a form that they're all mostly reliant on wheeled vehicles. The Diversanti, which kind of sounds like they're trying to sow diversion behind enemy lines, come with a VSS, which is obviously a very rare 9x39 assault rifle, more of a sniper sort of version of the AS Val, but this one can be upgraded from the informers to the ambushers. You do lose the VSS, you keep the suppressors, but you go up to an RPG 30 on each team member, although it looks like Ivan here has not got the memo that he doesn't have to be wearing his ghillie suit anymore. The Spetsnaz GRU, which have a couple of options, the RPG 28 heavy anti-tank launcher, again, two VSSs, some AK-15s, and also some GP-34s, although those are not going to be suppressed. The Verba anti-aircraft, you can kind of swap between this 8-man heavy AA or 8-man heavy AT squad. Of course, having an anti-air with 2100 meters is pretty decent, and this one, I should mention, has 400 meter range, but 900 heat pen, so kind of a spicy unit. And at last, the Verba plus 28, and this one I'm not really sure why you would not pick this by default. This is probably the time in the video where I should mention this is all a work in progress and early access, and this is very likely going to switch because this is kind of unfair giving a unit both of these without having any downsides that I can quickly see here or there. The BRDM 3, which is very similar to a BTR-82. I believe the BRDM is always going to be the name for the Recon variant, though. That's, I believe. The BTR-82A can go up to the AT, where you get a little bit more vision range, which is always welcome, but that seems to be about the only real big upgrade that we can see here being changed. And the PRP-5 turret looks freaking like a thing out of Star Wars. You lose the 30mm gun, but you do go up in vision range by like a lot. You go from 1750 up to 2400. You also gain a laser designator, which can be useful here in terms of spotting for your artillery or even for helicopter or aircraft mounted weaponry. You do actually save 5 points compared to the bigger one in terms of the extra range on the Recon. So this is kind of like a heavy Recon focus or like a medium Recon focus. With the armor going to up armored, I've mentioned this every single time. You can see here the little amphibious icon goes away, so you do lose amphibious capability. But again, interesting, you gain a lot of armor, like 500% in the front, 600 in the rear, in terms of heat and kinetic. White is the kinetic energy weapons, and orange is the, or red, orange-red, I'm colorblind, is the heat penetration that weapons will have, and that's what this will protect against. Now, the thing is, it's not slowing down still. There are some units that do slow down in terms of their speed when you up-armor them, but not the BTR or BRDM, apparently. Moving on to the UAZ Kozlik. This is a funny one. We have a KPVT, the gun off of the barrel that you're, the gun off the turret of a BTR or a BRDM. This is a 14.5mm heavy machine gun, and this guy is happily, both guys are happily chilling there, and also a PKP, nice little secondary machine gun there, as if this wasn't big enough. We can upgrade that to a recoilless rifle. Upgrade, I mean, kind of side graded, I guess. Or the cannot be said on YouTube, I believe this is also a word for bassoon, as in the instrument, ATGM. Again, I'm not really too sure if this should be only 45 points. This may be like a 0-point upgrade and then 5 and then 15. Again, might be balanced later down the line, work in progress. Just letting you know that this is maybe not the final stats in terms of the actual point values. But yeah, having an ATGM on a vehicle like this, kind of spicy. It's going to be very fast, and decent optics. That's going to be hard to see probably too. And finally, the Corsair or Corsair, I'm assuming this is a Corsair, little UAV. We can give it slightly better sensors. Slightly better is maybe a lie. It actually goes up by like 25% or 20%, so that's not terrible, from 2000 to 2400. We can give it a couple of weaponry systems here, 2 concours or the heavier 2 attackers, which are obviously a lot better, but yeah, you're also paying 50% more on top of that, and then your unit just becomes, boom, 50% more expensive as total. So, all right, moving on to the infantry, the AGS-17, very simple 2 sections of 2 men with AGS-17 automatic grenade launchers. Again, note the EMR camo on the infantry, but then they're again wearing this Flora style camo like on the helmet and on the vests. So these are probably not the most trained units. These are maybe sort of secondary in quality, but guess what? Quantity is a quality all of its own. The Moto Pehota, I probably mispronounced that, which are just, I think, dismounted infantry from the BTRs and BRDMs and any sort of transports that you would really use. I love the animation here on the RPG. A pretty all-around good squad. 65 points. You get 6 AKs, you get 2 grenade launchers, you get a PKP, you get an SVD, and an RPG-7. So this is basically a squad that can kind of do everything, but, you know, they're not very expensive. They're probably going to lose the fight against a dedicated anti-infantry unit, but if you have to use them in a pinch, hey, they can pretty much engage 500 heat pen isn't the best, but they can engage at 400 meters with everything, and at 600 meters, they can still engage with a medium machine gun and a marksman rifle. The PTO Matisse is a little bit more of a longer range anti-tank version dedicated squad. You still have the same number of men. You just lose, I guess you lose the SVD, and you lose a grenade launcher, but you do get 2 Matisses instead of just 1 RPG. And yeah, you do get twice the range on that with 10% more pen. Not the worst, a little bit more damage. Focus from being all around jack of all trades, kind of, you know, master of none squad, to really more focusing on a dedicated anti-tank role, but still being capable of dealing with infantry attacks or assaults. But this is more of a defensive unit for sure, compared to this might be more for offensive positioning. The PTRK Cornet, a 3-man little anti-tank, or 4-man, sorry, I didn't even see that guy here, 4-man little anti-tank launcher team. We can upgrade that to the Cornet M. Just gives you a little bit more pen, a little bit more damage, and a little bit more range. Now I do wonder, is the reload going to be the same? Oh, the reload is pretty similar, so there's really no reason to pick it other than just, well, the reload might have been worse, I figured actually, but you know, it looks like the same reload, just better pen, better damage, and yeah, the better range is going to be worth 20 points. It's a good question though if that's worth it. The PZRK Igla N, which is going to have the Igla N or the Igla S. You just get more range, and that's honestly already a big upgrade, because I think you want to have as much range as possible if you're going to dedicate this squad to an anti-air role. That's like 11% more range, or at least a little bit more than 10, so it's definitely worth the 10 points in my opinion. All right, and then finally, the SSO, probably one of the units I'm personally very interested in game, but also in real life. A pretty dedicated assault section here with flashbangs, RPK 16s with these massive 95 round drum magazines. You can kind of see them right there. And we also have the Boer, which is a thermobaric launcher, but this gets 12 shots. It's kind of a good, I'm actually very excited to see this be like used on building assaults, close quarters, a bunch of grenade launchers, but you are missing a dedicated anti-tank role. The standoff section is 5 points more expensive. You get the SSO version. I do like the SSO version of the 74. You get a couple of grenade launchers. Now you get 2 PKBs, or PKPs. You get an SV-98 sniper, and you do get the RSH-G1, which I believe is also a thermobaric launcher. All right, so we can do a quick comparison here between the Boer and the RSH. You do get only 5 rockets with the RSH-G1 versus 12 on the sort of closer quarter section. The RSHs do have more range, they do have more heat pin, and they even have almost double the damage, but they have the same accuracy, so maybe this is kind of an interesting setup. You're still not really able to deal with any heavy armor, but at least you have something to defend yourself with in terms of a lighter vehicle that maybe doesn't have too much ERA protection on it, but still you wouldn't really use this section against a vehicle. You would use this against a building, occupy it, or wipe out the defenders, and then this is a pretty decent section to defend with, whereas this one obviously is more of the airdrop right next to the building and assault it with the flashbangs. Moving on, the BTR-82A, pretty standard 30mm cannon. Upgrade that with a completely ridiculous looking turret, by the way, with 2 concours, one on each side, which are fantastic ATGMs, 750 pen, 1600 range. But yeah, you do look flat out ridiculous. There's no other way about it. Surprisingly, you can still actually go amphibious with this, but you do get a little bit more vision range as well. In terms of armor, you get a little bit more health, a lot more armor. It's very necessary because your armor is atrocious at 30. It's depressingly bad. The thing is, you lose the amphibious capability, which at this point should not come as a surprise. Then the K-16 Boomerang. This has always been an interesting one to me. I think this is it's such a giant vehicle. Not sure the logic behind it, but look at how tall this thing is. It's the size of the freaking Mi-24 in the background. It's big. It's a huge vehicle. It doesn't have that much armor. We can upgrade it with the BM module, which makes this look kind of like a T-15, like the APC with the tracks. You get a way bigger upgrade in terms of your ATGM. You get a 30mm autocannon, but you're also spending twice the points, turning it from a K-16 to a K-17. You're spending twice the points now on just the APC that doesn't have much armor. Now, the armor part, yeah, we can give it a little bit extra armor. Still has amphibious capabilities, by the way, but this is barely worth it. Like, you're adding 20 points here, 20 points there, 10 points there. Like, this is barely worth using. The hit point one might be the bigger upgrade. The Afghanit gives you APS protection, intercepting enemy missiles, projectiles in general, but you do not have the health bonus. So to get the health bonus and a little bit of extra armor, you're spending 135 points for one K-17 Boomerang. Whereas if you take everything off, you're looking at 45 points. So one of these, granted it's not very great with just a heavy machine gun, or you can spend the full 3 points worth of an equivalent of that, and then you're still not very armored, though again, you do have the active protection system, which is nice. You do have the gun, but I don't know about that one. That's a really tough choice to make. I don't know if many people will be running this, because that's a lot of points to lose, and that's the equivalent of 3 unedited ones. Under the support tab, the 9K51 Grad. This is a rocket launcher. We can upgrade that with cluster warheads or incendiary rockets. There's not much to say. It's pretty obvious. This is the standard thing. This is for anti-vehicle, for anti-infantry. I mean, it's just a truck with a rocket launcher on the back. The Smirch. This is going to be a high explosive by default. Then we can upgrade it to cluster warheads. But this one is interesting. We can go for a guided HE or a guided clusters, which just makes the accuracy a little better. So besides the accuracy upgrade that we could see here, where it just gets slightly better accuracy when you go to the guided ones, we can also go to this tab here and actually see that there is the top-down attack. There's nothing here, but going here we can see the laser guided and laser guided. So you are spending more points, you're getting a little bit more accuracy, but the real thing you're getting here, besides also a little bit of range, actually, you get 600 meters more range, is the ability to drop it on something that one of your recon teams or a recon drone or helicopter or any sort of thing with a laser guidance system can then help you way more accurately pinpoint and actually hit enemy units in the back. Then moving on to the OSA AKM, a wheeled AA unit. This one is interesting. The very basic one and the more expensive one are not really that different, outside of the fact that the stabilized one can engage missiles and yeah, has a slight range upgrade, but you're really getting this to deal with incoming enemy missiles over the 0 extra point cost one. Moving on to the S300. Now the missile upgrade just gives you a little bit more range. I spent a lot of time looking and seeing if there's another thing that I'm missing for a 25% upgrade in terms of cost at a 300 meter increase, but it doesn't look like it. But, well, you're actually paying more to resupply it, and it takes longer to resupply. But, yeah, maybe there's a reason why this is super worth it. I'm not seeing it, so this might just be an issue somewhere where it needs to be buffed or just needs to come down in price. The Tochka U, this is a ballistic missile launching truck. I've actually seen this in armor before. It's pretty funny. But you can just swap from an HE to a cluster missile. So you're just getting more of a focus on anti-vehicle. You can see here the damage drops from 70 to 20, but the heat goes up by almost 100% from 250 to 400. It's just you're hitting the top or weak parts of tanks as well compared to hitting, it says it right here, top down. So that's the thing, you're hitting vehicles or you're hitting infantry, just pick the right one. The Ural 430, it's interesting we can actually upgrade this to the armored troop transport version. You get to, yeah, you know, sure, we get a little bit more health. You get a little bit of armor. I wouldn't want to sit in the back of these either way, but it's cool to have a slight option. Again, what this would need, and this would be really cool, would see a speed reduction, but I think where they really get you is your lift weight. So you may not be able to carry as much supplies in this one, but you do have some extra armor, but that's why this actually is kind of balanced, having a slightly less or no cost difference between these two. The Ural ZU, well, this one obviously comes with an anti-aircraft gun on the back, though we could upgrade that kind of as we've seen before. This one has 2 Igla launchers, and this one is, I believe, yeah, it's a 57mm gun. The fact that this is even in the game is insane. This actually is almost sad or depressing. It's a cool unit. I don't know if it's going to be that useful. The main thing about this, besides getting the upgrade on the Iglas, you also get a slightly better ZU. As you can see, the range goes up a little bit, tiny bit better in terms of accuracy, but you also gain 200 meters of vision range. That's maybe why that's worth the upgrading. Now, this 57mm, yeah, sure, you can use it against vehicles, but you're driving a freaking truck. Like, even this is barely worth it. Your health goes up, which may be the biggest upgrade of all. I don't really think these side or front armors really matter that much. This is like a Mad Max looking vehicle at this point. So, yeah, you can make it more expensive, going from 90 up to 95 from 50. So almost 100% increase. Last, the Ural 5323. Similar, you can, again, upgrade the armor. Yeah, is it worth it? You lose half of your carrying capability for a little bit of armor. So this is just a choice. I, again, wish there was a slowdown in speed. I think that'd be really cool to see. Like, do you want to have armor but slower, or no armor but you're a little faster? Helicopters, we do have this time the Mi-24K, which has just 120 points. It doesn't come with a lot. It just comes with a couple of these rocket spammy boys, but we can upgrade that to, well, nothing. We can make this very cheap at just 90 points. Now you're wondering, like, why would I do this? It's 5 ECM. It's not that great. It's better than nothing. But we're looking at this right here, the laser designation. This is a Recon helicopter, and making it 90 points is actually pretty fair. I think it's cheaper. It has a gun to defend itself with, sort of. But yeah, you could start putting some rockets on. But I think the fact that it's actually 90 points for a Recon helicopter, not that bad. Now you can give it some more unguided rockets or some gun pods. So you can make this still cost 145 points. But I wouldn't really be putting my Recon helicopter within 900 meters or stuff is going terribly wrong. You could go up for 80 dumbfire rockets. Yeah, now your helicopter just went from 90 to 150. So an interesting choice. So keep that in mind. Actually not bad for a little Recon helicopter. The Mi-24P Phantom does not come with that laser designator. This is not so much a Recon helicopter. Comes with a couple of these S8 dumbfire rockets, and this time comes with a 30mm gun versus a Yak-12, which I believe is a 12.7mm gun. So yeah, you do get an upgrade, but you're also the base value is already up 40, and you're not getting that laser designator. Then on the pylons, we can add some anti-air missiles, which is good. You can have some real anti-air missile dedication on the Mi-24P, but then you can't sadly double up on that. You could go double up on the Recons, which then gives you 8 ATGMs with alright stats. Helicopter at that point does go for 190 points. Personally, do something like this where I would want to have at least one that focuses fully on these anti-air missiles, which still makes it pretty expensive. It's a shame you can't take these rockets off to make this a little bit cheaper, but this is a decent air-to-air, air-to-helicopter, I should say, or anti-helicopter unit, just giving you 4 R-60 missiles. Mi-24 VP Crocodile, which actually is cool. We can swap between the 23mm here in the front or the 12.7. I think that's a fair 5-point difference. I don't really think that this should be any more expensive than this, because this is going to be so irrelevant for the majority of the engagements that you're doing. For the middle pylons, we can have nothing. We can have the S8 rockets. Now you have 80 of them because it comes by default with 2 of these, with 40 in total, or some of these Recon anti-tank missiles again. And then lastly, we can go for the 4 Recon anti-tank, or for a total of 8, or, which is actually kind of interesting, 4 Recons. Take these away, we can go for 4 Recons and 2 Iglas, giving you kind of a best of both worlds. Do you want to deal with enemy helicopters, but also with enemy vehicles? No, you have some sort of an option. You only have 2 AA missiles versus, well, having none. But this might actually not be the worst setting. This is not a bad option for the Mi-24 VP Crocodile, having just the option to engage both air and land targets. But then the Phantom is obviously a little bit more better at being dedicated against that, especially when you consider the range on those missiles is better, and the damage is higher, and the penetration is even higher. So kind of a last resort if you're bringing Iglas, but it's nice to have a combination available. The Mi-28 Ochotnik, always love the look of the Mi-28. I think we can put this giant ball radar on the top. Looks pretty cool. Just gives you 400 more spotting range, which is good. You know, you don't want this thing to get shot down by something you couldn't see. And also, like the Apache, it looks weird without that on there. It looks like something from like a sci-fi movie. Oh no, this thing I recognize. And then it looks weird. In terms of the inner pylons, right now we have these S-13 rockets, which are the very big 130mm rockets, which are just massive. But you can swap those for the smaller ones. I like the bigger ones because A, you don't want to be in range of target for very long to spam 40 rockets, but 10 is pretty manageable. You're also getting a little bit more range. And the rockets that you do fire, you want to have higher pen width and have more damage on IMO, but maybe some people will disagree. But I think this needs to be a hit and run. If you're going to use the rockets, you want to make sure they do as much damage as possible, and you're likely already in the middle of flying away. Then, this is an interesting pick. More of these S-13s, but this is kind of ridiculous. I don't know if this makes any sense. It is technically, at this point, still a Recon helicopter in terms of vision. Oh, you don't get that laser des that the Mi-24K gets. A little bit better ECM. But yeah, this is a little silly. Maybe let's not necessarily do the double up on the S-13s. You can get some more rockets in the S-8s, but that's also not really worth it. But then look at the cost increase. 16 Attacker ATGMs for 100 points. We do get 16 of these pretty damn good anti-tank guided missiles. We can mix them with Iglas, which is actually not bad. I like this combo, but very expensive because you're able to now deal with air and vehicle threats. And of course, the full AA build. This is an interesting one. I've always really liked the full AA build on helicopters in any game where I could do it, like World in Conflict as well. Dealing with enemy helicopters with my own helicopters, there's just a little bit of a troll feeling involved when you pull that off. Then finally, the Mi-8 MTV2 Pachela, probably mispronounced that. Choose between rockets or gun pods. Same idea. I think that rockets make more sense because that engagement range at 900 is just so low. It's so scary. And then finally, the outer pylons. We can go for more rockets, but why do you want your Mi-8 to cost this much? I would personally go for the 5-point difference. Isn't that crazy? But I wouldn't want to add another 25 points onto a transport helicopter, really. And this is also kind of a light support helicopter, but even then, that's a lot of points. At that point, you're better off investing in an Mi-28. As always, the aircraft are going to have a bunch of options. The MiG-29 SMT here has a is not at all an exception, with more fuel tanks, with longer range AA, with more longer range AA, and just a bunch of rockets, bombs, thermobaric, cluster, and smart bombs. And we can just load this baby up with pretty much the most expensive bombs that we want. And this now becomes a pretty expensive air-to-ground dedicated unit. But you could make this as specialized or as all-around as you want, with rockets, with short-range AA, with long-range AA. It's just maybe a little bit overkill to load this thing up with a lot of different roles, because then it becomes kind of expensive as well. The Su-24M2 is going to have a lot of options for bombs, and I'm talking like a lot, from stupid to cluster, incendiary. We have thermobaric, very large ones at 1500, or just lots of tiny ones at like 250. And yeah, you can carry 12 100s, you can carry more of these 1500s. The thing is, at what point does this plane become too expensive and you're like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be grabbing this many? Probably pretty soon. But yeah, you can carry AA missiles too, but if you're relying on your Su-24 to be shooting down aircraft, it's probably a little bit too late. And these are also short-range missiles. The Su-24MP, this is your SEAD aircraft, dealing with enemy radar installations. They could bring some of these KH-25s. We can bring more rockets. Again, I don't know if rocketing is always such a good idea, because you have to be getting very close to the enemy. So personally, I'd really focus on getting these SEAD rockets on board to deal with enemy radar. But you could bring more and more, even short-range AA. I personally would go pretty cheap, maybe even just make it this, just so you have what you need. And then if you wait, what is that? How big is that? A 340 millimeter. Okay, I take it back. I think this is a really funny but stupid setup. But this is a long-range anti-air radar anti-air killer, and then you have two of these 340 millimeter rockets. It's a Storm Tiger, larger than a Storm Tiger. Also, sorry, almost as large as Storm Tiger. Storm Tiger, I think, is 380. But like, what are you? That's I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I'm just kind of astounded by this. This might not be very effective, but it looks really cool. And well, if you pull it off, big props to you. Should mention that even if we take the fuel tanks on this and we take this empty, it does come with a single SEAD or anti-radiation missile. So you always are going to have at least one SEAD. I feel like if you're going to bring a SEAD aircraft, make sure you have multiple missiles. You don't want to have one shot, one opportunity, and then missile doesn't hit. You definitely want to fire more than one, in my opinion. And then finally, the Su-25T. In terms of sensors, we can add the Kopio radar, which gives it 100% from 6 to 12,000 spotting. It does add 20 points. Surprisingly, dragging this underneath the fuselage doesn't take the turning or the speed down. It would be cool to see that. I don't know to what degree that maybe ruins the balancing, but it would be cool to see just a little bit of a variation there, where you take this or you don't take this to really kind of mess up your aerodynamics. But let's keep it on board for now. Your wingtips, you can have some ECM going up to 3 times your base, from 5 to 15. It also adds quite a bit to the cost, but that's going to save you in the end, to be honest, if you get shot at. Then short range in the form of the R-73, the R-60s, which I believe are just slightly worse. Like, there's really not a huge difference. You're losing a little bit in terms of your damage and your penetration, but I don't know if that's worth the 10 points, or you can just double up on these R60s, where that's maybe not the worst solution, but you really shouldn't be using this in a short-range AA solution unless you really are in some deep trouble. You can mount some rockets. I've said what I wanted to say. I don't think rockets are very good on aircraft. You're just going to have to get so close to drop your rockets off that you're just putting your aircraft in way too much danger. But you can now mount some R77s, which do have 7,000 meter distance in terms of their engagement range. But you're an Su-25T. You shouldn't be really focusing on that, in my personal opinion. Leave that to your MiG, or to, say you're running this with the VDV, and you'd run that on your Su-57. Just maybe not the role of the Su-25T, but hey, the option's there if you want to feel like you really need it. The middle pylons, yeah, we have a lot more rockets, like 80 S8 rockets. I don't think that's necessarily that useful. They're actually interesting because they're laser guided. So if you do have a recon team out there, or a recon helicopter, these could be pretty good. And then of course we have the Vakir spam, which then these are kind of mixed in. The regular Vakirs, they have 16 of these, but they're mixed in with S8s if you wanted to run both of those, which you're just running an insane amount of missiles at that point. But we also have the mix with the S13s and the giant, was a 340 millimeter rocket, I believe we came to, 340 millimeter S25. Now, can you still mount? Oh, you still could mount. This thing could become very expensive very fast. Let's go back down to the cheapest one, just so we have an idea. And then finally, the inner pylons. We can go for some fuel tanks, which might be nice. I don't really know if your fuel tank is that necessary. You do gain almost 100% time over target. I believe this is a I believe the way this works is this is 180 seconds. This is 300 seconds. Do you really need to plane in the air for 300 seconds? Maybe not. With some more air-to-ground missiles, some seed, which is actually kind of nice. This is the one thing I would say load up on this, so you can kind of save on the Su-24, but then you're multi-rolling this already, or just some more rockets. So you really could go crazy by just loading up these S-25 rockets on every single tip that'll have them. Yeah, you're kind of overkilling it. If we're going to do it, actually, we would get this. So now we have Vikirs. Actually, no, this is funnier. We have 8 of these rockets. You have almost 8 Storm Tigers firing. Is it going to do a lot of damage and explosions? Yeah. Is it going to be worth it? No, probably not. With that being said, I guess we got to the end of the Motorized Infantry tab, and that is going to be it for this video. Expect to see some more multiplayer gameplay, some single player gameplay. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you were sort of quench your thirst for Broken Arrow. I know it's hard, but it's out in 2 months, and I can't wait for everyone else to finally get access. And I guess I'll catch you in the next one.